With kilometres of pristine Indian Ocean beaches to its west and the wide and winding Swan River to its south, the town of Claremont in Perth, Western Australia, is perfectly located to enjoy the blue skies and carefree outdoors lifestyle that pampers the people of this modern city for much of the year. But in June 1996, winter was beginning to cast a dark shadow over Claremont. Fear had taken hold.
Now another young woman, Jane Rimmer, has gone missing too.
We are looking at possibly 2 homicides committed by the same person.
A serial killer was on the loose, and he'd already struck twice within 6 months. Between the early hours of January 27 and June 9 of 1996, 2 young women, Sarah Spears, aged 18, and Jane Rimmer, 23, vanished after a night out with friends in Claremont at the Continental Hotel and Club Bayview. Miss Rimmer's naked body was located in a shallow bush grave on August the 3rd, almost a month after she was last spotted walking away from the Continental. Sarah hadn't been seen since the start of that January Australia Day weekend, and all her mum Carol could do was hope someone knew something.
I would just like to appeal to anyone that may have sighted Sarah to come forward and help us.
This is episode 2 of Claremont, the story of the Claremont serial killings, which you can subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts. The crimes we delve into have remained unsolved for more than 2 decades. But suddenly, in December 2016, there was a major breakthrough.
It's taken 20 years, but police believe they've finally caught the Claremont serial killer.
With 50-year-old Bradley Robert Edwards, who has pleaded not guilty to murder, abduction and rape, soon to face trial, justice for the victims' families could be just around the corner. But as you'll discover, the road to this point of the Claremont serial killings case has been very long, full of anger.
To be falsely and maliciously accused of such totally bizarre, obscene and vicious allegations of committing murders you know nothing about.
Heartache.
My wife didn't want to come this morning. She is numb with shock. And she... excuse me.
And confusion.
If they've got nothing to charge him, they should just leave him alone. But they won't leave him alone because they think that he's the person who did it and they just want to follow him to see where he goes all the time.
When Jane Rimmer, a childcare worker, became the second woman to disappear in Claremont in extremely similar circumstances, the West Australian Police knew they needed a dedicated task force. They codenamed it Macro and put some of the state's most experienced detectives in charge. Numerous lines of inquiries have and are being investigated, said a Taskforce press release on July 18, 1996. A large amount of information has been received by the Taskforce concerning the more obvious lines of inquiry. These include information about people's illegal behaviour and previous conduct. There are aspects which are of interest to investigators that people may not be aware of. People who change their routine around the time of the events. People who were absent or inordinately late on the nights or mornings in question. Detectives told reporters, for all intents and purposes, the person was most likely living a normal, everyday life. Criminal psychologists at the time, like Tim Watson-Munro, agreed.
They're really able to mask the dark side of their behaviour and personality quite effectively. So they may hold down jobs, they may be family people.
Police asked young women to think hard about a person who may have previously offered them a ride home. Because nothing out of the ordinary had occurred, those women may have thought nothing of it. Remember, the police were saying that no one had seen a struggle or heard a scream in the case of either victim when they disappeared into the night. And adding to the theory that the 2 women left the area in vehicles they were relaxed about stepping into, was the fact that Sarah Spiers had definitely rung for a taxi from a Claremont phone box before vanishing at around 2 a.m. And Jane Rimmer may have been looking for a cab when she went missing just after midnight. Police had little option but to focus heavily on cab drivers.
It was like a taxi rank at Warwick Police Station this morning, only the cabs were going nowhere except to help police in their hunt for a serial killer.
Cabbies had their fingerprints taken and their mouths swabbed for DNA as police tried to eliminate an entire industry from their manhunt. It was a confronting and controversial time for Perth's taxi drivers, as former Taxi Industry Council Chairman Howard Croxon explains.
It ultimately got to the stage where it had built up to be so powerful that the industry had stepped back, and we took the view that we needed to go to sit down with the police and talk about ways that we could at least give them the chance to quarantine or eliminate a large part of the industry. The police that we were working with in those days were incredible people. They had their mind. They weren't accusing anybody. They were just saying, how do we deal with this? It was a big issue.
Yeah, because obviously the problem for the industry was confidence, consumer confidence, and
exactly.
that you had to help yourself out of that as well.
I mean, well, the position. I mean, there were obviously some in the industry that said, "Oh no, we're not going to be involved in that." They're accusing us of things we haven't done. But from an industry point of view, the revenue levels were going down. I mean, the industry was suffering badly as a consequence, and from an obvious situation that they were going to be. People were just nervous about getting into a taxi, and the hype that'd been built around it that's how it happened. So I guess really we had two things to worry about. One was trying to work with the police to see if we could help them solve the crime as such, and the other is to clear the taxi industry's name and let us get back on with the job.
Was it easy to convince a lot of taxi drivers to go and do this, to go and give their fingerprints, to go and talk to the police, or was it difficult?
When you think about it, it was pretty easy. I mean, there were, I think, something like 4,000 or 5,000, might have been more. There was a big number of licensed taxi drivers, and some weren't even in the industry, but they had taxi licences. And every one of them, I think there was possibly 8. From memory, I'm stretching my memory a lot.
But a handful, only a handful.
Yeah, but it was no more than 10, I would imagine, that didn't get tested at that Warwick Police Station on that Easter weekend. And I think 4 of those had gone missing, probably travelled overseas or somewhere, and there was, and I'm guessing now, but speculating, but I think it was about 4 that said, no, we're not going to do it. And
for whatever reason.
For whatever reason.
All right, but there was also, of course, this view in the background. Well, okay, maybe it's not a taxi driver as such. Maybe it's not a registered, licensed taxi. It's a fake one. Well, how could you deal with that?
Well, that was a very difficult problem because there was several in the industry had this view that were people borrowing licences? Had someone stolen a taxi? Had someone used a vehicle illegally, or had someone just got hold of some decals and put them on a car and gone out there and turned it into a taxi at night? Most people wouldn't be able to tell.
If you had a few drinks, you've come out of a club, you're looking for a taxi or you've called one, and there is something that looks like a cab. You wouldn't think twice.
Absolutely. And you hail the cab and the cab stops and you run down, jump in the back seat, and off they go. You don't think about looking to check the driver's identification.
But in the background to the hunt for a serial killer, there was a line of inquiry police could not ignore, and it was perhaps the reason that many detectives discounted the taxi theory. In February 1995, almost a year before Sarah Spiers was taken, a teenager was abducted near Roe Park in Claremont as she walked home alone late at night from Club Bayview. She was driven away from Goojeri Street in what was reportedly a light-coloured panel van and raped in Karrakatta Cemetery just a few hundred metres up the road. This could have been the Claremont serial killer's first attack, and there was no taxi involved. 17 at the time she was abducted, the young woman was 19 when the killer's second victim, Jane Rimmer, went missing. She has never been identified, but in displaying great courage, she spoke to the West Australian newspaper soon after Miss Rimmer vanished in June 1996 to warn other women to be on their guard. You're going to hear what she said at the time about leaving Club Bayview on her own so as not to spoil anyone else's fun, and the impact that decision has had on her life. We've used another person to read her words.
I knew if I told someone I was going, they'd come with me, so I thought I'd just go home and not make a big drama about it. I didn't even think about the dangers. That changed my life, a snap decision. That's what people don't realise, how much it can change you. He took away my trust in people. I'm harder now. I judge people more quickly, and I'm scared every time I go out, no matter what time of day or night. I realised that unless they found my attacker straight away, the only way they'd catch him would be if he offended again. And I couldn't bear the thought of that happening to someone else. It was really hard when Sarah Spears went missing because I thought, this person is unstoppable. But if it's the same man, why am I here? That's the only reason I think it might not be. It could be different people who know Claremont's an easy target area. It makes you feel sick. I keep thinking that could have been me. I think about how lucky I am.
Bradley Robert Edwards has also been charged for the abduction and sexual assault against the Karrakatta Cemetery victim. Again, he's pleaded not guilty. Apart from the taxi industry, there was also fierce media interest on the town of Claremont generally, and feeling that more than most were the businessmen whose two night spots, the Continental Hotel and the Club Bayview, were now synonymous with the disappearances of Sarah Spears and Jane Rimmer. They said very little publicly at the time, but privately they were dealing with a crisis that was only going to deepen. As gruesome as it might sound, the discovery of Miss Rimmer's body in the fringe southern Perth suburb of Wellard provided police with their first crime scene and best chance to crack the Claremont case. An autopsy revealed the cause of death, but macro Taskforce detectives were keeping that under wraps. They did say the crime scene and style of murder had given police an insight into the killer and put the investigation in, quote, a stronger position. It gives us a lead to follow up, said Taskforce Chief Detective Paul Ferguson 2 days after Miss Rimmer's remains were located. And he said a chance to get into the mind of the person responsible and eventually put him before the courts. The media was chasing down all the angles after the discovery of Miss Rimmer. One report was headlined, "How the Killer Would Feel Now," and it quoted forensic psychology professor Don Thompson from Edith Cowan University. It may be the case that the person would have planned for the body to be found, he said, would have had an expectation that it would be found sooner or later. It definitely would have had an impact, whether it would have resulted in fear, anxiety, or a bit of a thrill in that it had escaped detection this long and the police don't appear to be any closer to apprehending him, close quotes. The remainder of 1996 drifted by. The Macro Task Force was snowed under chasing thousands of pieces of information from public tip-offs. None of it provided any breakthroughs, at least not publicly, and despite any clues the detectives gleaned from Miss Rimmer's discarded body and burial site, the investigation appeared to stall. Not unexpectedly, the level of intensity, anxiety and publicity surrounding the disappearance of Sarah Spears and murder of Jane Rimmer was subsiding by March 1997. A patient predator was again preparing to strike. Police would once more be forced to appeal for the public's help, as victim number 3 vanished.
Yes, we do link this disappearance to the disappearance of Sarah Spears and Jane Rimmer. The girl or the woman disappeared from the same location in very, very similar circumstances.
Ciara Glennon, a 27-year-old lawyer, disappeared soon after midnight on March 14. Like Sarah Spears and Jane Rimmer a year earlier in 1996, and the young woman abducted and sexually assaulted in the Karrakatta Cemetery in 1995, Miss Glennon had gone for a night out with friends in Claremont. As was the case with Miss Spears, Ciara Glennon had told friends she was going to get a taxi. Evil was lurking after dark in the leafy western suburb, and another family was now at its mercy.
Una, my wife, didn't want to come this morning. She is numb with shock. Excuse me.
Dennis Glennon was the latest father trying to cope in a horrendous situation.
She has asked me to appeal to the mothers, the wives, the girlfriends, the ladies in the community who may have a son, a husband, a partner that they notice is doing something different now or did on Saturday morning. And Una says, look, please help her. We're just distraught. And, you know, we just need your help and your prayers. We are a strong family, and I don't cry easily. But Ciara's alive. We believe that. And we are confident that the way she's been brought up, she will fight on. And we are hopeful that she will be found at the stage even.
Mr. Glennon, did Ciara give any indication to you or your family on how she was going to get home that night? Did she describe to you what she was going to do at all?
Una spoke to Ciara at about 5:15, just before she was to finish work, and we knew that she was going to have drinks at work after that, and we didn't know that she was going on to the hotel. But Ciara has just come back from travelling the world for a year. She's very resourceful, she's very streetwise.
Do you have theories of what might have happened? She would have had to have been overpowered in some way?
No idea, Alison. Just no idea. We've thought of everything, but you just drive yourself crazy. And we just don't know. Just give me a moment. Ciara came back for Denise's wedding. And at this stage, life must continue. For us, for our family, and for Denise. And Ian. And at this stage, we intend to proceed. But we may change our mind on that, and we will inform the invited guests if we do. But life must go on. That's what we intend to do. Ciara may be there.
As television reporter Alison Fan pointed out in her story that night for Channel 7 News, detectives present at Mr. Glennon's appeal were wiping tears from their eyes. But the heartbroken father, who had previously watched the parents of Sarah Spears and Jane Rimmer suffer through this public torment, continued.
Only now do I even begin to understand the terrible trauma that the parents of Jane and Sarah went through, and you know, the degree of empathy that I have with them now is just enormous. And my final comment is that no parent who loves their child, even a child of 28 like Ciara was, can even begin to comprehend the devastating thing that this is in any family. I just would like to conclude and just ask all people who are in the Claremont area, no matter how trivial it was, to please come forward. And those that cannot come forward, just pray. We need your help. Thank you.
The Macro Taskforce was now searching for 2 missing women feared dead and investigating the abduction and murder of a third. Lead Detective Paul Ferguson told 7 News presenter Susanna Carr that piecing together Ciara Glennon's movements on March 14 and 15 was vital, and getting the most out of Macro's manpower to catch the serial killer was critical.
Ciara came out of the corner door of the Continental Hotel. She walked down towards Stirling Highway and was near Bellissimo's restaurant there.
Do you think that she was perhaps heading towards Stirling Highway?
Well, she was certainly heading in that direction, but we have no information at this stage where she actually reached Stirling Highway.
So obviously people who were driving along Stirling Highway or anywhere down that direction now, you really want them to call Crime Stoppers?
Certainly do, yes.
Now, this must be a tremendous strain on you and all the officers involved in this investigation.
Oh yes, it's a strain. In actual fact, it's more of a strain on my workload. We've made a decision today that I will step away from the media and concentrate more on the operational matters.
Less than 3 weeks later came the development in the Glennon case that no one wanted to hear. It's April the 3rd, 1997.
Just before 11 o'clock this morning, police converged on this new crime scene north of Perth. A short time later, they visited Ciara's parents.
Police now had a second body, a second crime scene. Miss Glennon was dumped under the branches of native acacia bushes about 50 metres parallel to Pipperdinny Road, which is 50 kilometres north of Perth's central business district in a sparsely populated area known as Eglinton. She was semi-clothed and spotted by a 24-year-old man walking through the sandy, scrubby area. When Macro Taskforce police descended on this area, they took with them a new weapon in their fight to find the serial killer who was behind this murder, the disappearance of Sarah Spears, and the death of Jane Rimmer. An FBI criminal behaviour consultant named Captain David Caldwell was now part of the widening investigation. His involvement had been funded by the law firm where Ms Glennon worked before going missing in March. He publicly said the 3 abductions were the work of one man and that he might shift his hunting ground away from Claremont because the third strike would undoubtedly change attitudes of young women in the area. There would, he said, have to be an awfully good reason for him not to do it again. Months pass without another case unfolding, but in the background the Macro Taskforce was hot on the heels of a suspect. And on Wednesday, April 8, 1998, the West Australian newspaper's chief crime reporter Luke Morfess splashes with a front-page story. "Serial killer force strikes," screamed the headline. He reveals that Macro has been running a covert surveillance operation on a public servant for some months, and that the man had been recently arrested and questioned by heavily armed police as he drove his car in the early hours of the morning in Claremont. A media frenzy ensues, and the commander of the task force at that time, Detective Inspector Dave Capehorn, responds publicly with a written statement. The Macro Task Force has conducted an operation over the weekend, which has involved the search of several premises and the interview of a significant person of interest, the statement reads. It goes on. The person of interest was identified and evolved through investigative processes employed by the task force. He has not been charged, his status remains unchanged, and inquiries are continuing. I am concerned, he said, about some of the disclosures in a newspaper report which involve statements regarding covert operations and practices alleged to have been conducted by the Macro Task Force, close quote. But reporters soon discovered the public servant's identity. The curious life and personality of Lance Kenneth Williams, aged 41, would soon change forever.
Sorry, I've spoken to you a few times today on the phone. I just really wanted to ask you a few questions. Are you the serial killer?
No.
Are you innocent?
Yes.
How has this surveillance affected you?
It's been very distressing on me and my family. Yeah.
And how does it make you feel? How long have you been aware that you've been followed?
Since about April. Yeah.
Lance, it appears now that you failed the polygraph test. Can you tell us why?
Well, that was a very disturbing thing to me because I'm the one that suggested I take that test initially because I'd heard that other people they were investigating had taken it last year, and I had no reason not to take it, and I at the time didn't realise it was brought from over in the United States, and so I said, well, why haven't you given me the test, and then they explained it was brought over from the United States, and I thought I'd just get some advice about, what to do about it, and the lawyer says, no, something might go wrong, so I sort of left it at that, and but then I decided, well, the surveillance was going on for so long, and I had nothing to hide, so I thought I'd just go and do it. Yeah.
So Lance, originally you refused the test?
No, I brought it up. They never even suggested it to me.
So until this recent weekend, you were never asked to do the polygraph test?
They had given me, well, after I sort of said to them that I'd heard about it, I just said, well, initially why hadn't they given it to me, and then they the people came in and said, it's brought over from United States, and then I said I'd just like to get some advice about it,
Lance, the thing that I think people, don't understand is why were you following women around Claremont in your car?
I just went coming home from Claremont, as I do quite often, and when I saw a lady approaching the car saying, where are the buses and that, I thought, well, that's, I said, by that time of night there's no buses, and then I just took her down a couple of kilometres to near where she lived, and that was it. I never had any intention at all on any other occasions when I saw women walking in that area. All I had was concern, that there was women walking around Claremont on their own late at night, especially from what had happened all the years before, on the couple of years before.
Lance, I'll ask you again because it's what everyone will want to know.
Yeah.
Are you the serial killer?
No, I'm not. No. I mean, I went in voluntary to do a test at the police station. I mean, I was under no obligation to. I just wanted to, because the police were parked over across from my parents' house and on weekends, and sort of waiting for me at work and that. I just thought, well, I'll just go in there, do the test, and because I had nothing to hide,
And what now for you, Lance? How has this affected your life?
Well, it's been very distressing, and especially I actually went back to my parents because, I needed some sort of, company over this time, and it's just been very, well, it's not easy. It's good when I get into my normal routine at work and that, because I can sort of just do my work and do the job I'm supposed to be doing, and but I know that's not been easy for my parents, and I've just
what would you like to say to police, Lance?
Well, as I've said before, I know they've got a difficult job to do. I've said this directly to the people in charge, of the investigation there, and if I could do anything myself, somehow, to help, I would. But, obviously they've got a job to do, and it's just they've got to follow up any leads, I guess, or any activity which might be in any way, I guess, somehow resembling what might have happened to the young ladies that went missing, and
Finally, Lance, why did you detail your car around the time one of the girls was murdered? A coincidence? What's the reason?
No, there's nothing there. I think that's slightly out of perspective, because I actually bought my vehicle and I picked it up after the first episode that happened in Claremont, and someone said they found some sort of a detailing slip. I had my car detailed as part of a what they call sort of like a discount on my purchase price. That's the only detailing I've ever had done, and that was done before I even picked my car up, which was actually after the time of the first incident in Claremont.
So that was just bad timing?
Well, I've got all the records at home. I've got the dockets at home to say when I got my car. I even went back to Skibbers to verify I had my car on a certain day, and it was all there exactly as I have at home, which was the 30th of January. Because I'm only speaking because you've approached me. I mean, it's all been a bit distressing, just to have all these phone calls and people turn up at work, and I've told you all these things. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't really. I didn't bring all this about. I mean,
no. It's Lance, how old are you?
41.
41. Lance, do you have a wife and children of your own, or no, you don't? Right. The other thing is you live with your.
Sorry.
Do you have a lawyer?
Well, I initially got some advice about, doing an interview and a polygraph, with the lawyer. That was quite a while back.
And the advice, and you said you went against the advice that you did it voluntarily, and.
Well, he said with the polygraph it's up to me, and I mean because I had nothing to hide, I just went ahead, after some time because basically, it was something there that they said was a good. They used the words that it was a good tool to. Eliminate people and that.
The thing I don't understand, Lance, is originally we were led to believe, and I can't remember if it was said explicitly or not, was that that you had refused to do the polygraph. I just want to be clear on the fact that you say you've never refused to do the polygraph. Sorry, if you could just look at me now because my camera.
The right thing about it, the way it started was, I actually brought it up in the first place. No one said to me, "Oh, look, we've had polygraph tests done." A year ago on 53 or whatever, 54 people, and no one sort of asked me did I want to do it. I just brought it up myself.
So police didn't approach you initially?
Initially, no. No, initially I brought it up.
Lance, what were your alibis for the nights of the disappearance of the 3 girls? What were you doing on those nights? What did you tell police you were doing?
Well, the first time I didn't even have a car, so that was basically the first thing I was trying to tell them, because I didn't. Well, they must have been talking to people at my unit, where I live, the units, because they said I had access to a car, but I mean my mother used to come round and we used to have driving lessons, so that could be the other car they saw, but that was always locked or always in the garage at their place.
Do you remember what you were doing the night each girl disappeared? What were you actually doing on the nights, the dates the girls disappeared?
Well, on Fridays, I would have just come home, and what I used to do was mainly just cook dinner, and I used to go to have a bit of a swim, then I'd cook dinner, and I would usually watch TV, because I still at that stage hadn't had a car, on January 26th, because I didn't get my car till after then. So, I mean, I wouldn't have gone anywhere that night, because the only times I used to go out before, when I didn't have a car, was when I used to go gambling, and I haven't been gambling for over 3 years now, so I didn't go gambling because I would have had to have catch a bus there,
And Lance, sorry to hurry you along, it's just we're all in a bit of a hurry. And what about the night Jane disappeared in June? What were you doing that night? And Ciara, do you remember? Was there a memory you could give police of what you were doing?
June the 9th.
Yeah.
I went out with my parents to a Chinese restaurant in Claremont.
And when Ciara disappeared on March?
Well, I was staying with my parents then, because I'd been back from. I'd been away from work and that for quite a while, because I had a lot of depression and stress, and I remember I was with my parents from about September through till the following June with them, and I wasn't starting to go anywhere till about April, because I mean that was just reflected in my bank accounts. I wasn't drawing money out till April. Everything was sort of being brought for me, and because I was basically under the care of my parents. And through the whole episode, I mean, I've had the only involvement I've had in Claremont was basically an innocent thing, to do with taking someone home who obviously didn't know much about bus timetables and things, and I guess there was taxis, but I guess I didn't have any, never really had any idea I'd get stopped by the police.
You did actually pick a girl up in your car?
After she approached the car and wanted to find out about the buses and that, and after telling her that there was no buses at that time, because I knew the bus timetables, because I used to catch the bus regularly, because when I didn't have a car, and then I just took a couple of kilometres down at Mosman Park and, there was nothing wrong with doing that.
In the next episode of Claremont the podcast, the laser focus of the Macro Taskforce remains on Lance Williams, while his mother comes to his defence, and 7 News reporter Alison Fan recalls the hour she spent in the apartment of the prime suspect as a serial killer remained at large.
I've sort of gone away from that real close friendship sort of thing, people...
You're a loner, is that?
Well, I suppose you'd put me in that category, but I do like the company of people. It's not as though I shun people.
This podcast was written by me, Gary Adshead, produced by Clarissa Phillips, recorded in the studios of Red Wave Media and made possible by the archived resources of 7 News Perth and the West Australian.